After seeing their 126-game regular season winning streak come to a bitter end against Baylor on Thursday, the UConn Huskies are officially back to their winning ways. A 20-point victory over Houston has restored a bit of normalcy for the 11-time national champions, but with conference play just gearing up, there's plenty more to accomplish if the possibility of a 12th title is in the cards. Tonight, the Huskies are back at Gampel Pavilion to take on Cincinnati in hopes of starting yet another historic winning streak. We get it all going with the UConn women's basketball pregame show, and it begins right now. Pavilion on the campus of the University of Connecticut, where the Huskies are playing for the first time this season since the opener back in November. UConn looking to move to 2-0 in conference play as they take on Cincinnati this evening, and all the action coming up top of the hour here on SNY. As we welcome you inside Studio 31, the UConn women's basketball pregame show. Gary Apple sitting alongside Kara Walters. The Huskies started the season with that impressive stretch of wins, and then they fell to Baylor last Thursday, their first regular season loss in about 4 years, and then the bounce-back win over Houston. So I think we're all caught a little bit off guard by the loss to Baylor. Were we not, Kara? To some degree,
yeah,
yes.
But you knew it was good.
It was possible.
Sometimes it was possible. That's the team you're going to lose.
All right, so what about your impressions, what we've seen from the Huskies so far?
Okay, the State of the Union of the Huskies, if you will. I think the Huskies are right where they were going to be at this point in the season. They lost a lot. You see the difference, not having Gabby Williams or Kia Nurse or those players, they're going to struggle. Obviously, the story is lack of depth. Can they win a national championship with basically playing 5 players for 40 minutes a game is what they're doing. And I think my impression so far is that things have to happen. They have to stay healthy. They have to make sure they don't get in foul trouble. All those have to line up, but they're right where I think they're going to be. They have holes to fill. They have no depth. They have to make sure they have shooting. They lacked in the post. Their transition game's not as good. Don't get me started. We have a whole show, so we'll talk about all the things they can improve at. But that being said, losing what they lost and not having a bench, I think they're doing pretty well. I
was going to ask, because we always have debated through the course of their winning streaks over the last number of years, would it be beneficial for them to lose a game in the regular season? I've always contended, no, I don't think so. But in this occasion, with this young team in many ways and so many new players, might this be a benefit to learn how to deal with a loss and not want to go back down that road?
I mean, I'm as competitive as you. I hate to lose, but I agree with you. I think losing is the best thing that could have happened to this team. Think about what happened the last 2 years. All of a sudden, you don't lose all season long, and you get into a Final Four, and bam, you have no experience. You don't know what it feels like. You don't know how to come back from that. So, to me, it was a really good loss. And if you're going to lose to someone, lose to somebody like Baylor, and learn a lot from that.
And do it early, right? So you have a chance to rebound and then get on a roll as the season winds down then into the tournament. So, while the 126-game regular season winning streak has come to an end with that defeat at Baylor, there are still a number of streaks still alive for the Huskies. One of the most notable, UConn has never lost to an American Athletic Conference opponent, which is hard to believe right there. They've been absolutely dominant since the American Athletic Conference came into existence. Let's welcome in Justine Ward right now. She joins us from Storrs, Connecticut, Gampel Pavilion. And Justine, what about the reaction of the UConn coaching staff following the win over Houston? Was Gino satisfied with the bounce-back effort by his team?
Hi, Gary. Well, Gino Emma told me, aside from that first quarter, he saw a lot of positives in that game against Houston. He said our offense was better, it flowed better, and we shot the ball better. If you'll remember, they shot just 29% in that game against Baylor. He said a lot of our team's offensive hallmarks, that shooting the ball well, moving the ball well, were missing in that game against Baylor. And he says they'll look to take another step offensively today.
Well, Gino's made no bones about it. He wants to see his team more aggressive on the offensive end. So how do they go about that? How's it going to manifest itself moving forward?
Well, Gary, Gino told me the main goal in practice this week has been getting into a better flow on offense. And he told me that often will start on defense. He wants to see this team create more on defense. He pointed out that they only had 1 steal in that game against Baylor. And we know from watching these Connecticut's teams the past few seasons that when they get out in transition and they move the ball up the court, that is when they're oftentimes most successful. So look for for them to play up-tempo tonight. Look for them to get out in transition and move the ball a lot better. Kate Lou Samuelson told me their biggest goal tonight as a team is to get off to a great start.
All right, Justine, we thank you. We'll see you coming up top of the hour here on SNY, UConn, and Cincinnati. And, you know, when it comes to getting out on the break and getting easier transition baskets, hard to believe against Baylor, they didn't have one fast break point. So when it comes to doing that and implementing that as a part of their offense, what about the role of the upperclassmen here and how they're going to figure into that?
Well, think about it. That's been their bread and butter,
yes,
right? Getting points off of turnovers, and that's when you miss people like Gabby in the lineup. But it has been the duty of the upperclassmen, and I think they've done a great job because they're not really vocal people. They're not people that are going to get in your face. They have to lead by example. They need to show you where to go and talk to you about what to do because they can't carry this whole load. They have to say, hey, you know what, Kristen Williams, come on, we have to do some things to get our offense going, but I think they do a really good job of making them feel like you have the green light. A lot of freshmen don't have the green light, right? We need offense. We need to create. We need everybody involved, and they've talked about that, and they've, in practice, I went to practice yesterday. They were really vocal helping the younger players, and that's necessary going forward.
So how do you get that to translate from practice into the game?
That's a good question because yesterday in practice, their offense looked amazing. So I'm actually expecting it to look really good tonight, but it didn't in the half-court set against Baylor. So honestly, that's just repetition over and over again. And I think this conference play gives them time to kind of breathe and play basketball and try things. Gino's got to try different options, different people off the bench, different scenarios. And I think now that they're in conference, they can maybe gain some confidence and work on something.
So what about biggest potential growth opportunity area or areas? How do you see that?
There's a lot. I think the transition game, like Justine said, they have to create. Defense has to lead to offense because that's been what they've been doing. They have to handle things in the post. They don't. That's not their thing this year. They're not a big back to the basket. I'd like to see Nafisa go inside a little more, but she does that face up, which she's very capable of doing. They need to just kind of find themselves and figure out what they can, because they need to rebound better. They need to shoot better. They need to get out and transition better. So there's a lot of things going forward that they can improve upon, and they know it, Gary. That's the thing about this group of kids. They're not thinking like they're going to win a national championship. They want to, but they don't have this, we're going to do it. We have to put in the work if we're going to win it.
You know what's amazing is the roof and the sky's falling after the loss to Baylor, right? They went on the road.
The flags were at
100%. I mean, they went on the road. They won at Notre Dame. They looked very good down the stretch of that game. They've shown flashes of being a national championship quality team to this point. Is it time to pump the brakes a little bit and say, okay, this team can still win a national championship?
Absolutely. Everything just has to, I mean, think about the numbers we're throwing out. They've never lost in conference. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, this was their first loss in regular season in years. I mean, that's ridiculous that we're saying those words.
Yes.
Absolutely, they can win a national championship, but everything's got to go right. They've got to stay healthy. They have to stay out of foul trouble. They have to keep growing and finding themselves. And who's going to there are opportunities for people to slide in here and help. If they want them, people on the bench can help, and they need to come in, but take advantage of those opportunities. But this is a team. We're talking about Connecticut basketball. They do things and they're coached a certain way, and you can't take that away from them. They have that goal.
The margin of error maybe a little bit smaller this year, I think. I think that's fair to say. So, Kara and I just getting going here. Our pregame show. When we come back, the UConn bench has been practically non-existent. So how does that change? How can it change moving forward? We'll address that. And as we head for break, I want to get a look at the standout freshman. There she is, Kristen Williams. Going to take a closer look at what she brings to the table. What makes her such a dynamic player for the Huskies? That and so much more when we come back in just a moment.
Williams looking pretty fearless so far as a freshman. Ahead to Williams. Nice quick step to get past the defender to the rim.
Williams from downtown and knocks it down.
Beautiful feed. Dangerfield to Williams.
Williams from downtown drops a three in for UConn.
How about Kristen Williams burying a three, and she is off to the red-hot start.
It is time now for Shining the Light. It's presented by Connecticut Lighting Centers, and the numbers, they do not lie. The freshman Kristen Williams has been an impact player from the word go this season. We caught up with the freshman earlier, and she told us why she inevitably decided to play her college basketball at UConn.
I was actually not really a fan. I wanted to go to another school to potentially beat UConn. So when I was a freshman, I started to get recruited by them, and I fell in love with Coach and the coaching staff. So yeah, things changed. Well, as a freshman, I had to talk to my parents, of course, and my siblings. And they said, yeah, you know, check them out. We're not going to just completely ignore them or anything like that. But, yeah, we did that, and I'm glad I did.
And with that, it's time to take a trip now into Kara's corner, and let's focus in here on Kristen Williams. I love the honesty right there, right? I wasn't necessarily a fan, didn't think I was going to play there, wanted to play somewhere else where I could beat UConn, but she fell in love with Gino, and things changed from there. So as you look at this young player, what makes her so dynamic?
I think you can tell just from that interview, the honesty and the swagger. She's not your typical freshman. She's got a little attitude and a chip on her shoulder, and you need that. If you're going to come into UConn and play big-time minutes to start, you need that confidence and that swagger. That's not even including what she does on the court, Kara. I mean, one of the things that sticks out to me with her, she has one of the best mid-range jumpers in women's basketball. I find that a lacking skill, honestly. The mid-range jumper, she does a good job crossing people over, stopping on a dime, and really getting her shot off. She's got handles, but she's a bigger guard also who can be physical, and she does great ball handling skills with the hesitations, the crossovers. She finds a way to get to the rim. We all saw her in this Notre Dame game, right? One heck of a game for a freshman. I mean, that just shows you the confidence that she has going in. But I like the athleticism with her. The mid-range jumper really sticks out, but she's able to put it on the floor, cross over, and get to the basket really well. And the thing with her is she has the green light. Her teammates have confidence. Even though she's a freshman, you have to prove to your teammates and gain their trust that, hey, I'm a freshman, but I'm going to work really hard and do the things I'm really good at. And she doesn't try to kind of go off and do things she's not good at.
The ability to create for herself, right? As you said, can put it on the deck, can create her own shot, which is really big. You mentioned the Baylor game. She had 28 points against Baylor. In many ways, that was her coming out party. But then, Notre Dame, I should say. And then against Baylor, she had just the 8 points. So what about finding that consistency and finding that middle ground there?
Really important. Those are the ups and downs.
How do you do it?
Well,
how do you find that
those
place?
are the ups and downs as a freshman where she doesn't have that luxury because she's being thrown in. So she has to kind of learn as she goes. And that's where the upperclassmen come into. I saw it the other day in practice. She got upset. Gino said she was the worst player ever to come to Connecticut, which is what he does, right? Kicks her off. Nafisa Collier comes over, talks to her about it, you know, because you're going to have highs and lows. But, hey, listen, she doesn't have the luxury. Kristen Williams needs to play well. So mentally, you need your upperclassmen to kind of help you through that.
She'll be in the starting lineup tonight for UConn as they take on Cincinnati. We've got more to do here on the UConn women's basketball pregame show. Roster depth, that has been a huge issue for Gino Auriemma in the past. And so where does the Hall of Famer go to turn for productive minutes off his bench here in 2019? We'll discuss when we come right back. So being amongst the nation's best, par for the course for the UConn women, but one area they certainly fall short in so far is bench production. Well below the NCAA average in most statistical categories. And for more on that, going to send it out to Eric Freed and Meg Como. They've got the call of tonight's game from Storrs, Connecticut.
Well, it's great to be with you here at Gamble Pavilion. It has been a while, hasn't it?
Who are you?
I'm your broadcast partner, Eric.
My TV
Hi,
husband,
Good to see you, yes. Well, we've got plenty to talk about here tonight as UConn gets set to take on Cincinnati. There are imperfections with this team. There's no question about it, even though they're a team that's third in the country with only one loss. But the bench is something that jumps out, and it's been a theme all season long. And the question is, will they be getting more from the bench? And I think that's the experiment here in conference play.
Well, they have to. You know, they went 4 games without the bench scoring. And when you play against the elite teams in the country, you know, you have those starters have to play perfectly and score a lot of points and play great defense and not turn it over. And in the game that they didn't do it against Baylor, you saw those imperfections, and they do need the bench to step up. But, hey, overall, it was a great experience.
Something to watch, too, is what are you going to get from Megan Walker? I think there's a lot of potential there. I think Gino Auriemma has said it time and again that there are things she can do in a game in practice that you see flashes of, but the light doesn't stay on all the time. I think that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on here in conference play.
True. And, you know, that Baylor game, again, a good example, a good learning experience for them. But Megan Walker said after that game, I now know how much more aggressive I need to be on offense. And so if you don't go through that loss and that painful experience for those kids, how do they know? They haven't lost a game in the regular season for, what, 4 years, 5 years? I mean, that's absurd. So Megan, through that experience and through that pain of that loss, she knows. I think that's a better lesson for her than Gino telling her day in and day out, you got to do this, you got to do that. Seeing it, feeling it in that loss and then seeing it on game film after, that I think is a better way for a kid to learn.
Well, one thing is for certain, UConn knew how to find their way back to Gamble. They haven't been here since November 11th. Looking forward to getting back here as UConn takes on Cincinnati at the top of the hour. We'll see you then.
All right, Eric and Meg, look forward to your call from Gamble Pavilion tonight. So what about, and I do want to hit on a couple of things there, but let's focus in on the bench. They've gotten 5 points over the last 4 games from their bench. Yeah. That's not going to work, no. I don't think, right? So, so how do they find some scoring from the bench, or beyond that, some intangible work from the bench?
Well, they have to.
They have to,
said.
Yes.
I think the freshman, Olivia Nelson-Ododa, she needs to come and be a presence. She's not going to play 40 minutes a game, so you need to find your thing. What's going to happen? What do you do when you get a game? Make an impact. Give somebody a breather. Be physical with somebody. That's the knock so far on her. She's not physical enough yet. You have to take your lumps and learn that in your freshman year. But the big presence inside, especially after losing Azare Stevens as your, back there, they need to find somebody who will give quality minutes, give people a breather, and I see her developing. But big girls usually take a little longer, I know. But again, we don't have the luxury. It's like, hurry up, let's go. It's just going to be one of those things where somebody's got to step up. Batuli got in the game the other day, which I was surprised to see against Baylor, so she must be gaining the coach's confidence. But somebody has to step up, and conference play will help.
Let's get to break right now, and as we do, going to get a look at the freshman. You mentioned her just a moment ago, Olivia Nelson-Ododa. May we see more of her off the bench tonight and in coming days. Our tip-off, UConn and Cincinnati on the way. Top of the hour right here on SNY. We're back in a moment. Time now for a look at UConn's upcoming schedule. It is presented by Town Fair Tire. And after tonight's game against Cincinnati, the Huskies host South Florida before hitting the road once again, going to take on Tulane and Temple. And then it's back to Gamble on the 23rd, going to host SMU. Tip-off against Cincinnati coming up just a matter of minutes here as we get a look at UConn's leading scorer, Katie Lou Samuelson, as she gets locked in for tonight's contest. Our Justine Ward spoke with the Hall of Fame head coach Gino Auriemma recently and spoke to him about a number of topics, including team identity. Take a listen.
You mentioned you have 2 new starters this season. You always talk about your team's identity. Do you feel like you have a good idea of what this team's identity is at this point?
Somebody just asked me that recently, and they said, what do you think, like, for instance, the Notre Dame game? What takeaways from that game? I said, well, this team doesn't really have a pulse. Like some teams, they have high blood pressure. Like it's constantly, they play like that. And this team doesn't play like that. This team is like this all the time. They don't get jacked up sky high. They don't get down and feel sorry for themselves. They pretty much just stay on that even keel. So if somebody say, what's the personality of this team? I would say they don't have one. And maybe that's what helped us stay calm on the road, that we didn't, hyperventilate like, oh my God, like sometimes teams have a tendency to do, players have a tendency to do. We don't have anybody that does that. So that's a good sign, I think. I hope that as we move along, we can create some spikes. But right now, I think that serves this team well.
How about that? That's really interesting, right? Personality, we don't have one, and you can catch...
Leave it to Gino.
Yes, you can catch more of Gino Auriemma tonight, season premiere of the Gino Auriemma Show. It follows our post-game broadcast right here on SNY. So he thinks it's not a big deal, that identity. What's your take on that?
Well, I think he's right, and it can be not a bad thing because they don't get too high, they don't get too low. However, everyone needs to know their role, and that's something Gino's looking for. What is your role? What are you going to bring to the table? What are you really good at? You need to gain trust with your teammates, how is that going to correlate on the court? Are you going to be a transition team, a fast break team, a post team? We know that's not their thing, the post game. I think it's more, big guards, trying to run the floor, that sort of thing. But I think the bottom line is knowing your role. And if everybody can figure out how they can contribute, doing their role and their job, I think eventually you'll see the personality develop. And that starts with the upperclassmen. I mean, we know they don't have huge personalities.
Right.
So I think that's where it starts. But they'll be all right. They'll figure it out as they go.
Here's what we do know. Whatever the team identity is, Napheesa Collier, she is a big part of it. She comes in averaging about 18.5 points per game on the season. Matter of moments, we'll have UConn and Cincinnati right here on SNY. Back to wrap up our pregame show in a moment. We get a look right now. Starting lineup for the Huskies. No change. Dangerfield and Williams, Walker, Katie Lou Samuelson, and Napheesa Collier go for the Hall of Famer Gino Auriemma. Give us something, Carrie, you're looking for specifically from the Huskies tonight against Cincinnati.
Better shooting. I mean, they grew from the Baylor game and played much better in the Houston game as far as shooting, but I think shooting's a big part. Get off to a quick start, work on your shooting, create your defense, lead to offense, and take good shots and smart shots. And they just have to get their streak going. Katie Lou Samuelson, early and often, I'd go to her to knock some down.
Shot 29% as a team against Baylor, came back, shot 55% against Houston. Final 10 seconds or so. Is that getting better shots or just making shots? I mean, they had shots against Baylor, right?
I think it's just making shots.
Making shots,
really, because they're doing a good job of getting each other open and setting screens, so I think it's just a matter of knocking them down.
All right, so Karen and I going to see you back at the half here on SNY. It's UConn and Cincinnati. All the action from Storrs, Connecticut beginning right now.